Maria, they have all been crushing it, holding my listings open, and handling my clients' demands pertaining to the open houses. So I just want to give them a shout out. They've all been really professional and just working hard. I know a couple of them have picked up some clients during the open house. So even though it's the holidays, guys, people are still doing real estate.
I love that, Bridget. And to give away one little secret, there's going to be a post on our Facebook page later today on exactly that. And we look at the numbers on the back end for all of you, and something that you guys may not realize, we're winning. So, I see a lot of the Facebook posts, like I'm in the same real estate Facebook groups that you are. I also watch the news on occasion, and I hear all of the things about the crazy tough market. And the reality is we looked at just San Diego Metro's numbers versus San Diego County, and we are winning in listings taken, in units sold. So you'll see the numbers. We'll post that later on the Facebook group. But I just want to say that I see you guys, and I know everybody's working really hard. Some are seeing the results now, and some are planting the seeds to see the results soon. So just know that we see you. We see the hard work that's going in. And as Bridget said, December is one of those months where a lot of people just won't work. So if you choose to dive in now, it's a great opportunity. Okay, let's move on to some celebrations. We have some agents that were just celebrated on the regional level, which is huge, you guys. This is fantastic. So this means out of everybody KW in all of Southern California. So we want to definitely call out Sal for being up on that leaderboard. Congratulations, Sal. Well done. And we also we had some more
another one
as well.
There you go. Can you see it?
Amy and Gary Bloom, congratulations. We love seeing you guys. It's really fun to be in the regional meetings and see our agents up on those top leaderboards. So congratulations, you guys. Well done. Okay, let's jump into some training and events that we have coming up. Again, these are some of those opportunities to dive in December. Tech the Halls is coming up on December 6th. So for those of you that attended with me last year, we are going to live stream it. This is taught by some of the top KW tech leaders across the country. It was a ton of fun last year. They're going to be even better this year. I know some of the people from being in these tech classes. It's fantastic. They will interview different people, individual agents, teams. They have people that work for the tech part of KWRI, and they're going to bring you some new developments in the tech, which are exciting, as well as ways to optimize and use what has already been in the technology package that you may or may not be aware of. So that's going to be a super fun event. It's from 7 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific. It is Zoom. So if you go to kwtechthehalls.com, you can book a free registration, or there is an option if you choose to donate to KW Cares, but that is a free Zoom. We are working on getting that to be live streamed at the office possibly. So you might see that coming up on the training calendar. But I want you guys to know you can just go register for it in advance so that you definitely have that Zoom link in your inbox. But it should be a lot of fun again this year. So I'm excited about that one. And then we also have market stats. Is that the next thing I have coming up? So our last market stats of the year, because it's December, is going to be on December 13th, our same bat time, same bat channel. It'll be at 1:30. That is also our year-end potluck. So that will be right before from 12:30 to 1:30. Please try to bring a main dish to share. That would be lovely. Evie would appreciate it as well as the rest of the team. So we'll see you guys then for the potluck and for market stats. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all at that time. Okay. Next
Bridget, did you have anything else to add on to that?
Yes, I did. Thank you. With everything going on in the world right now, the culture committee was just kind of chatting, and I think it's important to come together and celebrate our differences more than we ever have before. And so I would invite any of you who are from different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds, anything that you have that's special to you, whether it's a homemade dish or a decoration, we would love to have you bring it in for December 13th. Number one, so that we can celebrate you and what's important to you, but maybe to teach us some cool things about your culture, like if there's a particular dish or something that maybe we haven't tried. We could all try something new. So I would hope that some of you could do that, a side dish or main dish, something like that along the lines. Just respond to Evie's invite and let us know what you're going to bring so that we can celebrate everybody and make sure that everybody feels celebrated and included this amazing holiday season. And then, of course, the day after that, we are going to double down on the partying that week. Day after that is our holiday party. So we are going to be doing a couple of contests, obviously, who's got the best sweater, whether you want to call it ugly Christmas sweater or creative Christmas sweater, whatever you want to do. Wear it, and there's going to be prizes. We've got prizes donated by some of our amazing SMP vendors. So we're grateful for that. Because it's during the day, we're not really going to do the focus on +1s this year. We really want to focus on Metro and our own family and collaborating and chatting and just being together, just ourselves. So no +1s this year, just us. But we're going to have so much fun. There'll be more details coming out as we get closer. Yes. And of course, when I say Metro, obviously I always mean Metro and Signature, because we're all one big happy family, even though sometimes we're in different buildings. And so that'll be from 3 to 6 on December 14th. Let me know if you guys have any questions. As always, I got to give a shout out to our very own Evie Eve, who always puts these parties together, and without her, we would be completely lost. So thanks, Eve, for everything you do. And I can't wait to see you all partying in 2 weeks from now for the potluck and the holiday bowl party.
Excellent. Thank you, Bridget. Yes, double down on everything she said. That is awesome ads for our potluck. And I also look forward to seeing everybody at the holiday party and getting a chance to network and meet each other. I think sometimes we don't all get a chance to have a setting like that where the excuse is just to come hang out together. So I am looking forward to that as well. Movement Mortgage.
I think that leaves me. How's it going, everybody? Hope everybody had a safe holiday. Just wanted to let you guys know real quick that the Federal Housing Finance Agency did raise the conforming loan limits and announced the conforming loan limits for 2024. So nationwide, it's going to be 700,000, 66,550 is going to be the new conforming loan limit nationwide. And our high balance limit now is going to go all the way up to $1,006,250. So some of your heads might have imploded with that number. It's 1,006,250. So yeah, let me know if you guys need any help with that. Just keep in mind, Riverside County and different counties have different loan limits. And Riverside County doesn't have a high balance conforming loan limits at all. So they go straight into jumbo on top of 766,550. So just be aware of that. If you're looking in Fallbrook and Temecula, it's two different animals. So again, give us a call if you guys need anything. Be safe out there, and yeah, keep working hard. It's going to pay off. Thanks, guys.
That sounds like something great to reach out to everybody that you know and let them know those are coming very soon in 2024. New limits are coming. That's very exciting news. And moving into, let's see, we did that. We are doing, does anybody have a property pitch? Price enhancements, new listings on the market.
I do. It's
Go for
Emily.
it.
Hey, so I have a 2-1 single family home in La Mesa. It is about 1,000, I think it's just over 1,000 square feet. Needs some upgrades, but it'll likely be for an end user, I would say, in the condition that's in. Huge backyard. It has a huge mature tree in the backyard that they have wrapped a deck around, which is pretty cool. But yeah, 2-1 La Mesa. It's on Sturgis, if that helps anybody with the address, but I'll get all the details on the off-market property spreadsheet if Danica hasn't. She's on vacation this week. So, and we're likely going to start the price at $649. I think it'll end up somewhere between there and $700, realistically, condition-wise. Thanks.
Excellent. 2-1 in La Mesa, probably around $649. Very cool. Bridget.
Yes, I have a price improvement on my listing on 771 Esperanza Place. We fell out of escrow. We were in escrow at $1,320,000, appraised at $1,325,000. We're now down to 1,225,000. So if anybody wants $100,000 worth of equity, the appraisal is from this month. I do have 2 cash offers right now. I don't know if they're going to work out, so would love to do a deal with one of you guys. It's in Rolling Hills Ranch, which is a wonderful area in Chula Vista. No Mello-Roos and low HOAs. So reach out to me if you have any questions. Also, upcoming listings. I've got one coming up in Mira Mesa. It is on a slightly busier street. We are going to be listing that one, I think around 825, and I'm hoping it'll be on the market in the next 2 weeks. It's a 3-bedroom with an optional 4th. It's that 3-bedroom floor plan that's 2-story where there's like that loft area. Mira Mesa only has so many floor plans. So if you show in Mira Mesa a lot, you've probably seen it. You can easily turn it into a 4th bedroom. It's got a decent yard, but it needs a little bit of work. It's not bad, but it definitely could use a little TLC. Like I said, that one's going to be a really great price, around $825. And then I've got a condo coming up in Mission Valley, probably not until the new year. They keep pushing it off. So that one's probably going to be maybe late January. That one is over in right off of where In Cahoots is, and is it the Villas North? It's like In Cahoots and Del Taco, all that space right there. It's in that complex. It's going to be a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and we'll probably list that one about $425-ish. So reach out to me if you have any questions on any of those. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. So a few options there with Bridget, and then check the chat. There's also a 2-2 in Mission Valley, 550 parking spaces. So check that one in the chat as well. Any other just listed or price improvements?
I've got it coming soon.
Yeah.
Perfect. So for those of you who have investors that love to work with short-term rentals, it's going to be out in the Palm Springs area. It's actually in La Quinta. It is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo. It is at the living residences area of the La Quinta Resort. So it's packed full of amenities. It's going to be listed. It's in beautiful condition, fully furnished for $750. Last year in 2022, they netted $53,000 on that property. This year, they're currently at third quarter, they were in the 40,000 range so far, so they should make 50,000 again this year easily. So we are waiting. It's part of a divorce process, and we're just waiting for the title to get transferred into her name so that we can get it listed as soon as it's on. It'll be on the Facebook page, but give your owners a heads up, your investors a heads up. And I do have access to photos now if anybody wants them. Thanks.
Excellent. All I hear is opportunities all around. Love that. Thank you, everybody. Without further ado, Broker Bob.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Great. We have Jacqueline here today covering Sarah. Let's all send Sarah some love. I guess she's getting that cold that I sent your guys' direction. And it's a stinker too. Sorry. You all make it through it if you get it though. Happy Wednesday, KW Metro and Signature. It's great to see some people here. I want to give a shout out to all the agents in coaching that are participating in the 30, 60, 90 program with Coach Deborah and Coach Alicia. It is a great amount of, it's a great group of people that are learning what it's like to do the real estate business. And I'm proud of all of them for showing up each and every week, week after week, doing the hard work. And I'm really proud of you guys. So I just want to give a shout out to all those agents. And if you want to know about the 30, 60, 90 program, reach out to me because we're probably going to do a modified version in the office in Q1. We're working on it. So we're going to see how we're going to do that. All right. Without further ado, let's get right into the presentation today. So give me a minute here so I can redo all my stuff. I did drop the presentation into the chat box in a PDF format that you can download, and it will also have all of the presentation attachments. So you can just click on the links and it'll take it to the documents. I came up with this today for you guys. I want to give a little motivation for you guys. I know this year has not been, shall we say, fun. And where NAR is projecting, we're going to do about 4.4 million units next year. We'll do about 4.5 this year. Next year is going to be a little bit just like this year. So we got through the hard part. You're still here. You're alive. You're breathing. But my motto is, my mantra for the next few months, you're already in your 24 business plan, by the way, because if you start doing stuff today, that'll affect your 24 income. Do more in 24 so you can survive and thrive in 25. Next year is going to be a year where it's going to be about work in this business. So nothing more, nothing less. The market is the market. You just learn what the market is and you adapt to it and you adjust accordingly. I had a phone call with Ashley today because we both went through the 2006, 2008 crash. And we're like, yeah, this one's a little bit different. And my message to you guys today is there's a lot of agents out there that are not acting in the best behavior that they should. So just spread some love and joy for them out there. They really kind of need it. This has been a challenging time for a lot of agents in the industry. As Jacqueline said, we are leading in the metro office in our market. We're also number 2, Jacqueline, isn't it, in the region with all the KW metros in KWs in Southern California. So that speaks volumes to what we do here to help you guys succeed and move forward. So risk management meeting today, the 29th, guess what? It's National Chocolate Day. Broker Bug loves chocolate. So when I'm coming out to San Diego for the holiday party, you can really butter me up by bringing me some dark chocolate. I'll love it to death. What are we going to cover today? We're going to cover the CAR forms release that they do twice a year. So they call it the fall release, but it's released in December, which to me is winter. We're going to review about timelines on a contract so that when your timelines aren't being met from either the buy side or the sell side, you know when and if you need to send a notice to buyer to perform and then notice to seller to perform, because we don't want to get to what we call the cancellation of contract or sending a demand to close escrow. And I'll review some of that, what happens, because when an escrow kind of starts to go south and you guys are calling me for advice and input, I want to just walk you through exactly kind of some scenarios and what ifs and what happens when we get there. We also have some new laws. I'm going to review just one of them. There's a whole bunch, but I won't go over too much other than that new law. Each and every month, I like to give you something from the risk management committee that I sit on. It's stuff we talk about at that committee. We didn't have much that I wanted to share, but I did want to leave it's from NAR, the Q&A for the Burnett questions. That's the lawsuit. I just wanted to do this as an ad. I'm not going to go over it today, but it's what NAR has said, like what a lot of people have questions out there. Is this changing right away? What do? We have to change our practice. This Q&A will help walk you through some of the questions, but what my best recommendation is, as we go through an evolution in the industry, my recommendation to you is to be able to articulate and present your value to not only buyers, but to sellers. And that's the type of training we're going to put on the calendar. And I think there was one coming up about knowing your value with the buyer presentation I saw on the Facebook page today. Really important you guys nail that, because it's going to be a hyper competitive market moving forward. And the highly trained agents will be the ones that will scoop up the business. That means you've got to practice your dialogues, your language, and how to present your value to your clients moving forward. So let's get right into the forms that are going to be released. Now, these will update in December. I think it's they say it's the week of December 18th. So Mark's on the phone, just verify with me. We will have new what do you call those thingamajigs, Mark?
Templates,
Templates,
if
yes,
necessary.
templates.
Yeah.
We'll have new templates out for you to download. So it will include all the new forms. I'm just going to go through some of the ones here that actually there's only one brand new form. So that is the Buyer's Home Insurance Advisory. Now we came up with an in-office one already for homeowners, and now this will actually be part of the buyer's purchase packet. So not only will it have the agency disclosure, the RPA, the trust fund wire fraud advisory, the BPP, all these other forms, this is going to be bundled in the RPA, and it's kind of an important form so that when you are reviewing the offer that the buyer is going to be making, it is important that you review this form. Just don't send it to them to sign. Let them know exactly what every form is in there, and if they and review, you know, if you come to my contracts training class, and if you've missed it, you can go, we store it on YouTube, and we went through all these forms except for this one because it's new. But basically, this says hey, when you buy a house, you're going to have to get the homeowner's insurance. And what we're finding out in the state of California is that insurers are fleeing the state, and it's harder and harder and harder for a lot of homeowners to get insurance. So we recommend, if and when we do find you a home, we need to know if it's in a high or very high fire zone, and we got to start looking for insurance right away, not at the last minute. If you were on our call a few weeks ago where we had Joe Guidi on the call, he was saying he's had a heck of a year with insurance for homeowners. Here's also something too that can be a great touch for your sphere of influence right now. This happened to my mom in Northern California. She actually got a visit, and she lives in above Mount Shasta, below Oregon, the Oregon border, in a small town, like 8,000 people. They get a lot of wildfires up there. And she actually had a visit from her insurance company, making sure she had the house taken care of, so that in case there are forest fires, that she had all the clearing around the house. And they checked on her. So when she told me this, I said, Mom, you make sure you get this done, because the last thing you want to do is to have your homeowner's insurance be canceled. So you should be reaching out to your sphere of influence and discussing with them about the need to make sure, one, that their insurance is up to date and they don't miss a payment. It's a great little touch. And it's a great phone call if they're in your sphere of influence, or even if you didn't sell them the house. It's a great conversation starter for calling your sphere of influence and helping them, making sure that they're staying safe with their insurance. But this will be in this is the proposed new form. It's a draft. It could change a little bit, but basically you should be reviewing this form when you are having them sign the purchase agreement. Okay. Now let's go into the other forms that are important that you're going to have to understand. Some of these at the top is more for business. Rental stuff you don't use. Remember that. There is a what was I going to get to? It was the listing agreement. All the listing agreements, including the exclusive one, the open one that we don't use, the seller reserve we don't use, and the month. But that is updated, and it's updated to include a statutory limitation that a maximum exclusive listing period cannot exceed 24 months, and recording that listing is prohibited. Why did this come about? There was a company that came through California, and they were based out of Florida, and they did some really shady business practices. And what they did was they went to these homeowners and they preyed on the elderly, and they told them, we will give you $5,000 if you allow us to list your home if and when the time comes. And it was basically a listing agreement in perpetuity. And there was no way for them to cancel that. And they even put a lien, they recorded it as a lien on title. So Carr and the legislator got wind of this. And so they've updated the listing agreement to say you can't take a listing agreement that exceeds 24 months. Whereas before it was no end in sight. So just be aware of that. That's a new in the listing agreement. The request for repair form will be changed. I guess it's the seller response partial agreement section modified to include optional paragraphs for credits and revised purchase price. Now, if you want to go see what the revisions are, you can go to the Carr website and look at their revised forms. I didn't want to download every one of them that we're discussing here and go through them. But I do recommend if you want to see it, or if you just want to wait until they come out in December, you can do that as well too. The single party compensation changed a little bit. Some new language was added. The single party compensation is if you have a seller that doesn't really want to put it on the market, but you have a buyer that you want to bring, you can use the single party compensation agreement to use that. So if you want to marry a buyer and a seller, call me. I'll walk you through how to do it. Even Mark, he'll help you too. And we'll tell you what forms you need to do to make sure you get paid. The SPQ, the seller property questionnaire, was updated. Question 8D is added to address ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. And then 18C added to indicate if the property was originally a manufactured or mobile home. We do have those kind of pop up from now and then. People go out and they get into escrow on a property and they didn't even realize that it was actually a manufactured or mobile home. So that's going to be, that will be done on the SPQ. The SPRP was updated. It added some language. That's the seller's purchase of replacement property, meaning if you have a listing that the seller wants to go out and buy something new, that's a contingency for the seller to be able to use. So it added some language to require the seller to prove evidence that the seller has the replacement property, and allowing buyer to cancel if seller does not give proof or if the replacement property transaction fails. I'm glad they added that language, because if you're sitting there in a purchase agreement as a buyer with the seller that has an SPRP as a contingency in place, there was nothing that said that they had to show you that they had evidence that they were looking. So it allows the buyer to be able to cancel and get out and move on and go find something else if the seller's dragging their feet or isn't able to, that maybe they're just being picky and can't find what they want, and so they're just dragging it out and dragging it out. The tenant occupied property addendum had some changes. If property is to be delivered vacant, seller to identify how seller was able to get tenants to leave. And then a new paragraph added, if a buyer is a tenant, it's paragraph 2E7, added to specify existing legal requirements to identify use of security deposits, if any. So we'll wait and see what that one looks like. Water heater, nothing there. That's really important. And then there's minor changes on other forms that aren't worthy of going over, except for the RPA, the residential purchase agreement. I guess they added a drop down in 3Q2 for ordering, a fortress fire wildfire disclosure report. So a new report that you can add for a home in Southern California because it's a tender box. And then, of course, the RRRR, the seller response language added to paragraph 2 to make explicit that seller needs to sign the RR form or the alternative. So, and then the TDS, I guess there was a change there. Remove seller initial blocks on page 2, very minor. And then the text overflow addendum creates a separate TOA forms for different situations. So signature fields match the primary document. So again, this is in the handout that I put into the chat box. It's in a PDF. And you can click on this form in the handout, but then down here at the bottom, you can click on that link to get to all the forms if you want to go look at them. Any questions on that so far? Okay, so let's talk about notices, because this is what happens in the transactions whenever there's a challenge. So here's what will happen. I will get a phone call and the agent will say, broker Bob, I have a buyer that they haven't removed their contingencies, or they haven't put in they haven't removed their contingencies and they're due. Well, and I'll say, well, when are they due? Well, they were due 5 days ago. I'm like, okay, great. Well, did you send a notice to buyer to perform in order to remove those contingencies? And 95% of the time it's no. So here's where the challenge is. There are contractual timelines. Let me get, instead of the notice, I want to get to the actual the timeframes that are in the contract. This is the form I wanted to bring up. So this is page 2 of the contract that pretty much has most, if not all, of the timelines in the contract. So you've got final verification 5 days prior to close of escrow, assignment request 17 days. These are all time investigation, review of seller disclosures, title report, common interest disclosures. So, and then that's from the buy side, and on the sell side, the seller has to send their own delivery of documents. They need to sign and return the escrow holder provisions and instructions, all those listed at the bottom. And so what happens is when you get into escrow, now it is your responsibility as an agent to keep the buyer or seller on the timeframes that the contract calls for. What does that mean? So if you've got a buyer that, and usually it's inspections, I do see a handful of people that the buyer hasn't even done the inspections, and here it is, it's day 15 of the contract. And then they've got that buyer needs to remove the inspection contingency on day 17. So as the listing agent, it's your responsibility to keep the buyer on their timelines, and you need to watch the timeframes that are due and that are coming up. Because once you send a notice to a buyer to perform, what that basically does, it allows the ability for the seller to cancel the contract if the buyer did not remove the contingency and do the performance as requested. So let's say you use an example of the investigation of the property. It's due, they need to remove that contingency on the 17th day. If you are a listing agent that's keeping up on the timeframes and you want to make sure that this escrow stays on track, technically you can send that notice to buyer to perform on the 15th day. Because once you send it, that starts the clock for the seller to be able to cancel the contract and move forward. Because if you add 2, because the notice to perform is a 2-day window, correct? So if you've got 15 plus 2 is 17, then on the 17th day, if the buyer has not removed that contingency, then you can go ahead and the seller could cancel the contract and move forward and find another buyer. So what I find though is a lot of agents are fearful of sending the buyer to perform notices because they put the fear in the seller, and the seller is afraid, well, I don't want to piss off the buyer. But your fiduciary is to your seller. And what you don't want to end up in is a situation where you're not doing your fiduciary duty to the seller by keeping the contract on its timeframes so that the seller will not have a claim against you because you didn't take care of what you should have done in the escrow. So go through page 2 of the contract, understand what contingencies are in place and what timeframes are. And then back in the days when I first started the business, I had a spreadsheet that I would plug in my timeframes. And so I would know what was coming due and where I needed to be on track in order to make sure that if the buyer has not removed their contingencies, I need to make sure that they're doing that. The majority of the time, it ends up being loans right now. I'm getting a lot of calls where not movement mortgage, they're the best, but other lenders aren't able to perform on a contract or perform on their loan. And here it is 2 days after the loan contingency needs to be removed and 3 days prior to closing. And the lender's still dragging their feet or something's wrong, because lending is usually about 80% of why contracts will cancel. And so especially if it's a loan, and especially if it's a lender that you've never done business with, you've never heard of them, and you don't know, you want to make sure that there's not lender overlays that they're going to ask for last minute underwriting stuff, and it's going to put that buyer in a situation where they can't get the loan. So keeping your seller on your buyer on timelines, if you're the listing agent, is important for you, so you don't get a claim against the seller against you because you're not doing your duty. Yeah, so, and I get a lot of that. I get a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to piss off the buyer, or I didn't know I needed to send that. So that's why I'm reviewing it here. Same thing on the buy side too. Section N is all about what seller has their timelines. And so you're responsible, if you're the buyer's agent, to make sure that the seller is delivering all their documents in the time frame that they're supposed to, especially disclosure. So here it is. It's on the 5th day and your buyer has not received a disclosure. You should be sending that notice to buyer to perform on the 5th day to kind of nudge that seller to get them the disclosures. I do see sellers drag their feet a lot. So I get calls like that too. Now, HOA docs usually are the ones that's the biggest issue. And I know that they usually rarely get there within a timely manner, but just know if you are new in the business and you have a buyer that's buying in an HOA, you want to make sure that the listing agent on the other side is on top of things too. So from the buyer's agent perspective, you're making sure the listing agent knows what the heck they're doing as well too. Okay, so those are the basic time frames, and then what happens is, so here's your notice to buyer to perform, depending on what it is that the buyer needs to perform on. So if you're the sell side and the buyer's dragging their feet, you would be sending this notice to buyer form, whichever they're looking for. And then you would check whichever box applies and then send that out. So if it's due on the 17th day, you would send it on the 15th day to start the time frames, especially if you're representing the seller and it's a hot property, you know you can probably get it sold to someone that's really going to do it. And I like what Emily's saying is the NBP and the NSP isn't scary, but some people think it is scary. And then here's the notice to seller to perform, all the contractual obligations that they need to do. They did add the, this is the updated form. They updated it 12/21. And so they added the contingencies, the removal of the SPRP and the close of the SPRP. And then what happens after that? So what happens if you get to a situation where the buyer didn't perform? And now you got to cancel the contract because the seller says, I want to cancel it, put it back on the market. This is the form that's used. It's called cancellation of contract, disposition of deposit, and cancellation of escrow. So basic knowledge is it takes only one party to be able to cancel the contract if they're within their rights to do so. But it takes both parties for section number 2, which is the disposition of the deposit and cancellation of the escrow. So one person can enact the cancellation of contract. So if you're on the buy side and the seller has not, or if you're on the sell side and the buyer has not performed and didn't keep on their timelines, and that you're within, if the seller's within their rights to cancel the contract, they would fill out section 1A on top, and then per whatever it is, whatever the reason for the cancellation is, whether they didn't stay on their timelines, they didn't remove their contingencies, they didn't get the loan, whatever the buyer failed to do. The buyer can also cancel the contract as well too. So 1A3 is where you would check that box where the seller has failed to remove the applicable contingency or take the applicable contractual action. Or item 1B, where it's a proposed mutual cancellation, and that's the best if you can get a proposed mutual cancellation and check that, because here's what happens. When it gets down to section 2, this is the release of the deposit and the actual cancellation of escrow. That's different than the cancellation of contract. The cancellation of contract just cancels the contract, but now we got to figure out, what do we do with the escrow? What do we do with the deposit that's sitting in there? What do we do? And what does the escrow holder needs to have instructions to do? Now, the escrow holder can't unilaterally, by order of the seller or to the buyer, release the deposit. Both buyer and seller have to agree to the disposition. I had a call yesterday from an agent that is representing the seller and the buyer. Representing the buyer and the buyer wanted to cancel the contract because they inspected the property. Oh no, they couldn't get the loan. And so it was basically a loan contingency. So they had to cancel the contract because they could not get the loan. Well, guess what the seller was doing? The seller was pissed, which usually sometimes happens, and they were refusing to cancel the escrow and release the deposit, even though there was no good faith dispute that existed. The buyer was within their rights to cancel. So what happens in a situation like that is kind of a game of cat and mouse. The seller has to sign the cancellation of escrow and disposition of deposit. And if they don't, then they are subject to some civil penalties with Civil Code 1057.3 that basically says if there is no good faith reason to not cancel, then the seller could be liable for a fine of up to $1,000 plus attorney's fees if the buyer had to spend money on an attorney to get their deposit back. So I do see that like maybe once or twice a month where the seller is refusing to release the deposit even though they are obligated to do it. And it's just kind of a game of cat and mouse, which makes it hard for the buyer because the buyer wants, they want to get that deposit back and they want to go and maybe look for something else that is less money where they can get the loan. So that's what happens. And then the other form I want to review is the demand to close escrow. So this form is used after every contingency has been released and either the buyer or the seller is refusing to close escrow. This is the form that will be used at that time. And 9 times out of 10 or 99% of the time, you're going to call me anyway because I'm going to walk you through it. Just don't go off using this willy-nilly without seeking the guidance of me or Mark if he's available. But a demand to close escrow is basically putting either the buyer or seller on notice that, hey, all the contractual obligations have been met. You now need to close escrow, or we have the ability to bring legal action against you. And that's what this form is for. And it also gives the ability for either the buyer or seller to cancel, even though all the contingencies have been removed. And then at this point too, then the deposit gets probably stuck in escrow, and then both buyer and seller are sitting in a mediation proceeding, agreeing to what they're going to agree to, if they are going to even give the buyer part of their deposit back. And then new laws. Let me get to that question. Any questions on all those forms I went through? I'm seeing people. Oh, by the way, too, if you are a listing agent and you use the cancellation of contract, but the buyer hasn't signed it yet, but you want to put it back in the market, you need to put in confidential remarks subject to cancellation of current escrow. And then also in any offer, you need a counter offer, same terms, subject to cancellation of current escrow, because you have to get that first escrow canceled before you could technically sell it, because you don't want to have the seller obligated to 2 buyers. Okay, tons of new laws. Go ahead.
For the demand to close escrow, that can't be served 3 days in advance, right? Like the NBP can be with 2. That one's on time. I forget.
Yeah, well, you can do it within 3 days, but no less than 3 days as specified in the agreement.
So like if Nicole and I have a closing tomorrow that's going to go late, so I'm just going to use it. It should be fine, but I'm just going to use it anyway. So I can serve it today then, earlier.
So if you're looking at, let's say you had a close of escrow on, let's say it's the 7th, right?
Yeah.
And it's set to close on let's say it's I'm going to do this because let's say it's the 6th, but it's scheduled to close on the 8th. That's 2 days, but you can't send it more than 3 days prior to the close. But then the buyer has 2 days to perform, and it's actually 2 business days. So technically you exclude Saturday and exclude Sunday. So if they're supposed to close on the 8th, they can't, then technically you exclude the weekend and then they'll have until the 12th to close.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Robert, can I give a personal experience with this?
Yeah, please, Dan.
So not with the closing one, but with the escrow. I had a buyer who had gotten into escrow on a property that needed a lot of work. And when we found some major things that weren't disclosed to us within our window to be able to leave, we canceled our contract. We sent a cancellation of contract and they refused to release the escrow funds to us. And so, but they were ready to put it back on the market. And I held their feet to the fire because knowing that they couldn't do that as an active listing while it was still in escrow. So without having that knowledge, my client could have lost their earnest money if I hadn't gone to bat for them because they were fighting to hold on to that earnest money.
Yeah, I've seen sellers just become real stinkers, even if there's contingencies that are still open and they're not within their rights, but they just get pissy and that damn buyers, put my home in escrow. I mean, it's hard selling a home. There's a lot of emotions involved in it. By the way, you guys are therapists too, by the way. But thanks for sharing that story, Dan. And knowledge is power. It shows you how good you are. If you understand how to navigate through that, you're gold to your clients and you're getting lots of referrals. So this is the only new law that I wanted to discuss today. And it's the disclosure, what flippers must disclose about recent repairs and renovations. So be aware of this. If you are going and you're representing a buyer on a flip property, and a flip property is one that's been resold within 18 months of the original purchase. So in other words, they held it for less than 18 months, the flipper. So it applies to 1 to 4 units and seller accepts an offer within 18 months. And then renovations or repairs were performed by a contractor with whom the seller entered into a contract. It requires a seller to disclose to the buyer any room additions, structural modifications, other alterations, repairs, a copy of any permits if obtained, or if the seller contracted with a third party and was not provided with a copy of any permits, the seller may inform the buyer that the permits may be obtained through the third party and provide their contact information. These disclosures may alternatively be disclosed as a list as given by the contractor to the seller. And additionally, where the cost of the labor and materials was $500 or greater, the seller will disclose the name of each contractor and the contact information of each contractor as provided. So as a buyer's agent, if you're representing a buyer on a flip property, you need to know this law to make sure that you're getting the proper disclosures from that flipper. And I impress upon you, remember, not every agent, believe it or not, in this industry knows what they're doing. And they don't have guidance. There's about half of the agents in this city that are with small brokerages, and even the broker doesn't know some of this stuff. I've run across brokers that don't know the contract in my time as the broker for this office. So it's incumbent upon you to understand how to know what the flippers will be doing, and be really careful and tread lightly with flippers is my advice to you on that, because what I find with flips, and this is why our insurance is so high, our E&O insurance in Southern California has gone up, as all the brokers, all of our insurance has gone up because of all the flip properties. A little stat, if you want to know this, 50% of all E&O claims originate in California. 50%. And with the claims that we've been in, whenever I've dealt with a claims adjuster, the claim adjuster would say, you guys have it tough out there in California. You're half of my workload. We're a litigious state. So know the rules and that know to be able how to navigate your clients. I'm going through the chat box. Where can you get the form about flip requirement? It's a new law, Judy. So in the PDF that I sent you, all you got to do is click on the link. Thank you, Mark, for putting that. And then one last minute ad I forgot. Mark, can you remind everybody about the new law that's going in place with the FHDS that we've already put in place in our compliance review?
Do you mean how the NHD report is being changed? That part
Yeah.
of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a change that's going to take place in the format of the NHD report, and it's going to have 3 categories in it. And if the property is indicated as yes, meaning that it is in one of those high fire severity zones, then the FHDS disclosure and agreement is required in the transaction. Where it was kind of difficult to understand before because it could be in a state designated high fire responsibility area or a local responsibility area. So they're modifying the NHD, so it's going to be much more clear. So it'll be have like three categories, and yes and no. And if it says yes, the FHDS is required, and that takes place January 1st.
And when it takes place, we'll probably still get a lot of questions on it. Thank you, Mark. The FHDS, probably half the real estate community doesn't understand the form. So, and even when they get the decision tree, they don't understand the form. That's it. We're done.
Hey, Broker Bob, it's Russ. I got one thing to add, if I may.
Yeah.
So when I first got used to the NBP and the NSP, the notice of buyer perform, it scared me because I thought, oh, this is going to sound like I'm being an ass asking someone to do their job. And the more I'm in touch with the agent on the other side on a regular basis and keep the rapport with that agent, like I keep the rapport with my client, the easier things are so that I don't ever have to send one of those.
Yeah.
So that I let them know, hey, I'm here because I'm looking at the timeline. We're working together regardless of whatever side I'm on. How are things looking on your end at getting us those disclosures? And how are we looking at getting a response back to you? So for newer agents, the more you're in touch with the other agent and you are like a team member with them and you're collaborating with them, the easier this transaction can be. It's not a panacea because you can't control the other person, but it sure helps to grease the wheels in a transaction so that things go as smoothly as they can.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I didn't preface it with, you would never just send the notices to perform to the other side unless you had a working relationship or you were having conversations about it. I mean, you don't want to be a stickler and just, I'm sending this form over, here it is. No, you want to reach out first and say, hey, we're getting up on the 17th day where I want to, the inspection, how's that going? You didn't have the inspector in until, 2 days ago. Are we going to be able to move through this? Because if the buyer's going to ask for some requests for repairs, we need to move on this quick. But yeah, it is communications really important between you and the listing agent. In the situations where I get people to call me and the notices haven't been sent, it's because they don't have a working relationship with that other agent. The other agent doesn't even pick up their phone. So you will get some of that when you're dealing with other agents on the other side. Just be aware of that.
Yep.
All right, that's it. You guys get 5 minutes of your time back. I'm done. Back to you, Jacqueline, if you want to close it out.
Excellent. The only thing I would give you guys is with these next 5 minutes, if you want to take that to go call, BB dropped a little knowledge bomb in there that some of you may have missed. But if you want to call your sphere and just ask them if they're up to date on their insurance, that's a great takeaway. So if you were trying to figure out what to call, how to be of value today to everybody that use that one. Enjoy your 5 minutes. Have a great day, everybody. See you soon.